Hi, my name is Linda Fitchett. I am a former president of the International Association of Conference Interpreters, and now I am the project leader for interpreters in conflict zones. This is a project that IEC started in 2009, and we were most particularly concerned by the interpreters who had worked for international forces in Iraq and Afghanistan. And when the international troops left those countries, they left the interpreters behind. And this meant that the guys and girls were very threatened because they were considered to be traitors by many groups in their home countries, most particularly the insurgents who did not want any kind of communication with the foreigners. So, as I say, we started the project in 2009. And then gradually we built up a network. We worked together for a start with Red Tea, which is a not-for-profit organization, which was launched most particularly to try to help interpreters in high-risk settings. And then we got together also with FIT, with the International Federation of Translators, and later with YAPTI, the International Association of Professional Translators and Interpreters, with Critical Link International, which speaks largely for community interpreters, and with WASLI, the World Association for Sign Language Interpreters. And together we built a relatively loose coalition, which altogether is trying to work to help the interpreters who were left behind by our governments, but also for other interpreters who are being imprisoned, say, in countries where there is no or very little freedom of speech, where translators have been imprisoned because they have translated something that was seen to be undesirable by a government. And there are other, high-risk settings where we believe that both translators and interpreters should be protected. Over the time, we've written lots of open letters to governments, ministries, asking them to protect the interpreters who they left behind, to bring them back to Western countries. And also, we've written them open letters about the translators and interpreters who find themselves in difficulty in prison, even under the death sentence in some countries. We believe that our governments, the Western governments who took part in the alliances around the world, do have a moral responsibility, as well, of course, as a strategic responsibility towards the local linguists who helped them when they went into countries like Iraq and Afghanistan, and probably those that are now in Syria and in other trouble spots around the world. We believe they have a moral responsibility because although they've been trying to avoid this responsibility by outsourcing recruitment to defense contractors who make quite a lot of money by contracting local employees throughout the world, we believe our governments have a moral responsibility as the actual employers of these translators and interpreters. But of course, it's also a strategic concern because we're sure that, wars have not stopped. So we're likely to see more intervention around the globe in the future, and therefore a continued need for linguists who are locally employed. And we think that one of the best things that could possibly happen would be if the United Nations were to adopt a resolution similar to the ones that they've adopted in the past for journalists, asking that translators and interpreters should be named in an international protective text which will at least stop the impunity with which they are now being attacked, imprisoned, or indeed murdered. So we hope that soon in the UN we'll be able to hold a hearing on this subject. We think that it will take place on April the 10th in New York, and we hope that we will get support from all of the delegations, or at least as many delegations as possible, inside the UN. Very recently, we held a hearing also in the European Parliament on January the 31st this year, where we had many people who support our initiative from around Europe particularly, but also from other parts of the world, sitting together with the European members of Parliament to look to see how we can bring about more protection for our colleagues. And the members of Parliament were very interested, and they have promised to help. They've promised, first of all, to hold an urgent debate in the European Parliament in one of the upcoming plenaries, and also to support us in our efforts to get the UN to do something too. So we do believe that this year a few things are coming together. We've been working, as I say, since 2009. So in that time we've been trying to build up our network, to get correspondence, to find more support. And we do think that our efforts now are beginning to bear fruit. And I hope that everyone who listens to this video will support us, and if possible will sign a petition that we have on change.org. If you look at change.org and you look for protect interpreters or protect translators, you should find the petition. It's got a very good image of a target with bullet holes in it. And if you sign it, I'm sure that will be a great help for us when we go to our meeting in the UN. So thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Ernesto Urtasun. I'm member of the European Parliament. I'm member of the Catalan party Catalunya en Comú and a member of the Green Group in the European Parliament, dealing with economic affairs, gender equality, but also foreign affairs. Some weeks ago we had the chance to organize a very important hearing in the European Parliament. It was a hearing called Words at War, which was addressing the situation of interpreters in conflict zones. Why did we choose that topic? We believe it's extremely important to develop a legal framework to protect interpreters in war zones, because we have experienced in the past situations where those interpreters that are serving officials, military officials, diplomatic officials on the ground, have faced situations of violence, of kidnapping. They have been killed, and there's actually no legal clear protection for them. And this is extremely unjustified, because we believe that like many other people in conflict zones, which have sometimes a special protection under the Geneva Convention, we believe interpreters should also have this protection granted, and that is not the case. They are not even considered sometimes civilians in a particular conflict. And then what happened many times is that some revenge is taken on them after a certain conflict happened. This was very clear, for instance, in the Iraq War, where there was a lot of people, a lot of interpreters who were attacked and died. And another problem is that we don't have actually clear statistics about the interpreters facing this situation. So there's really a legal hole on their protection. So what do we want to do? We want to force member states to develop specific protection for them in different areas, protection on the ground, but also protection after the conflict. Because another of the problems that we have been facing in the past is that, for instance, many former interpreters on the ground have been, their applications to enter the EU, for instance, as refugees, have been rejected. And we have found former interpreters crossing through the EU, through the illegal refugee route, and that is totally unacceptable, because they, in the post-conflict momentum, they should have also the possibility of having a certain degree of protection. That is why there are several initiatives that we want to support. First is the initiative to have a resolution in the framework of the United Nations, but also as parliamentarians, we committed ourselves during that hearing that we organized in the Parliament to present an urgency in the plenary of the European Parliament to tackle the matter, and urging both member states but also the European Action Service to develop this particular protection to interpreters in conflict zones. So I think this is really a battle that is worth making. I think that the politicians should take very seriously into account this situation, and that is our compromise and our intention as parliamentarians in the coming months to work for that.
When I learned English in Afghanistan, so then one of my friends told me there was a airport where the NATO forces were located. They used to stay there. And one of my friends, he just discussed with me, he told me that you speak very good English, that you can go and try for an interpreting job. And my economic problem was also not so good at that time, so I had to go to that airport. And when I went there, inside the airport, there were guys standing in the gate, and they used to hire the interpreters. And I was also among them. They talked to me, how many languages do you speak? That they just examined me. Then they took me inside the airfield. The name of the airfield is Jalalabad Airfield. So I went there with them inside there, and then they examined me with the papers. They took my exam, and then they hired me. They told me that you are eligible to work for us, and you are good because you speak also two languages, Pashto and Dari, and English we need. And then they hired me to Kunar province. There's a province that is just close to our own province, and I was hired there with the advisors, American advisors. They were advisors for the ANA, Afghan National Army.
Okay.
So I used to interpret between these two people, the Afghan National Army and the advisors. I used to mostly stay inside the base with the advisors whenever they needed us. I was in my own room. They could call me, or sometimes we were in the office there, so that they could need us, and I could help them. And then so first time when I started working, I started working for the advisors for the ANA, Afghan National Army, and for the second time, then I worked for the advisors of the ANP, Afghan National Police, and then I had to leave the job, or there was some problem with the job, so then I had to leave the country. Then I had to leave the country because my life was in risk. I couldn't stay there anymore. And most of my journey to Europe was by foot, and it was from Afghanistan to Iran, and mostly was by foot, but a little bit by car. But mostly was by foot, that I had to walk by foot. And from Iran to Turkey was mostly also by foot, and from Turkey to Bulgaria was also by foot. And from Bulgaria to the other country was also mostly by foot. And then from Serbia, there was a train that I had to come with to the Austria with the train. The government had organized everything for the refugees. I don't know how was it, but most of my journey, that was very, very, very difficult journey. And believe me, in Bulgaria, when I was in the jungle, I saw some dead bodies on the ways. You know, they were lying there, and the cloth was up till the person who was with us, who was leading us from Bulgaria to the other country. I forgot the name. And then he told me that these are the dead bodies who were used to traveling who used to travel on this way because they couldn't travel because it was too long. And from Bulgaria to the other country, from Turkey to Bulgaria, it was 2 or 3 days on the way. And the same as from Bulgaria to the other country. And then from the other country to the other country. So mostly of my journey was by foot. And it was a very difficult journey. In the forest, in the jungle, I couldn't feel that I would leave this place because now I'm going to die. And I still have the pain here that I see. I still have the pain on my foot because of that journey. Yeah. It was too long, you have to walk. And it was also very cold. Yeah. You know, it was also raining in the jungle. Nobody was there. and you had many thoughts in your mind that what was going to happen to me if I stay here, if I become injured, if something bite me or something wound me. So what's going to happen to you?
Yeah.
So that was very difficult journey. Even this journey was a very difficult journey from Afghanistan to Europe. Mostly it was by foot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the same thing I need help, because if you look back on the journey, on difficult journeys that I had to pass, and if you look back on my situation in Afghanistan, that I cannot live there. If you look back on the reason why I cannot live back in Afghanistan, that's the most important thing, why I cannot live in Afghanistan. Because I went for the NATO forces, and because of this, my life was in risk. So this is very, very important to look back on this, that why was this person in risk in Afghanistan? Was it because of us? The NATO has to think about it. And those countries who are in NATO, they has to think about it. They have to think about it. That what was the main reason behind this person's life risk? What put him in risk? If they look back on that, so then they can come to the result that this person worked for the NATO forces, and he can never live in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Not at this moment. Now, in Afghanistan, the government is not that much strong that they can support. Even they are in defending situation. They cannot even defend themselves. How can they defend the common people, the people like us?
Yeah.
So that's the most important thing. And you cannot believe Afghan government at any time. They can be collapsed at any time.
Yeah.
So what my appeal from the NATO forces is, whoever can do anything, please help me out. If it's any kind, in any country, I don't choose the country that I have to stay in this country, in this country, in this country. I don't choose that. The only thing I need is the safe life. Is a safe life and a free life. The situation of those who worked for the NATO forces in Afghanistan is very difficult. It's very difficult for them to get there. And when I applied for the SIV, Special Immigrant Visa, they told me that you haven't worked full year, so we cannot help you. I replied back that if those people who you have problem, if they arrest you or they capture you, they don't ask you how long you worked. Even some people just went inside the base and then they came out. When they went inside the base for 1 day, and when they came out, so their life was gone. The people who like us, the interpreters were the most wanted people for the against people. They were most wanted people because they used to make communication between the common people and the NATO forces. But if the interpreter was not there with the NATO forces, they could not communicate with the common people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very important things that I have to be helped here. Now I'm in Europe, and so this is very important. I just need help from the people. I ask people to help me. That's it. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Admar, and good luck, really. Good luck.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.